SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝදායි.
Tonight, 48th session of the UNHRC. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights attacks Sri Lanka's Prevention of Terrorism Act.
I urge an immediate moratorium on the use of the Act and a clear timeline be set for its comprehensive review or repeal.
She also speculates on the effects of the state of emergency declared to ensure food security.
The emergency regulations are very broad and may further expand the role of the military in civilian functions.
Need of the time. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa addresses the inaugural session of the G20 Interfaith Forum in Italy.
Reconciliation is a critical need of our time.
Second coming. Ajit Nivan Kabra relinquishes his parliamentary seat as the president appoints him as the governor of the central bank. Getting the ball rolling. Colombo High Court trial at bar fixes date to hear the Easter Sunday terror attacks case. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 13th of September, 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Eknaik. Now then, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, today urged an immediate moratorium on the use of Sri Lanka's Prevention of Terrorism Act, whilst delivering her oral report on the island at the 48th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council. She called for a clear timeline for the Act's comprehensive review or repeal. Further, Bachelet speculated that the new state of emergency declared in Sri Lanka to ensure food security may further expand the role of the military in civilian functions.
I am pleased to update the Human Rights Council on Sri Lanka and the trends and issues identified in my last report. I acknowledge the input sent by the government in preparation for this update, and I note the President's statement in June that the government is, and I will quote, committed to work with the UN to ensure accountability, end of quote, and will implement, I will quote again, necessary institutional reforms, end of quote. I look forward to seeing concrete actions to this effect, in line with the recommendations that have been made in our report and by various human rights mechanisms, and my office stands ready to engage. I also encourage the swift and public release of reports of the National Commission of Inquiry that was appointed in January 2021, which I understand will complete its mandate by the end of this year, so that its work and recommendations can be assessed. The current social, economic and governance challenges faced by Sri Lanka indicate the corrosive impact that militarization and the lack of accountability continue to have on fundamental rights, civic space, democratic institutions, social cohesion and sustainable development. A new state of emergency was declared in Sri Lanka on 30th of August, with the stated aim of ensuring food security and price controls amid deepening recession. The emergency regulations are very broad and may further expand the role of the military in civilian functions. I know with interest the President's recent meeting with some civil society leaders, and I encourage broader dialogues and step to open Sri Lanka's civic space. I am concerned by developments in judicial proceedings in a number of emblematic human rights cases. They include the Attorney General's decision not to proceed with charges against former Navy Commander Wasanta Karanagoda in the case of the enforced disappearances of 11 men in 2008 and 2009. Despite various inquiries, the victims of the Easter Sunday bombings in 2019 and religious leaders continue to call urgently for restore truth and justice and a full account of the circumstances that permitted those attacks. In March, new de-radicalization regulations were issued that permit arbitrary administrative detention of individuals for up to 2 years without trial. I note that the Supreme Court has issued an interim stay order on their enforcement while it considers fundamental rights petition to challenge the decree. The government has also prescribed or listed over 300 Tamil and Muslim groups and individuals for alleged links to terrorist groups. In June, 16 prisoners who have been convicted under the Problematic Prevention of Terrorists Act and who were nearing the end of their sentences were pardoned. An advisory board has been established to which detainees under the Act can apply for their cases to be reviewed, and I urge a speedy resolution to these long-standing cases. The government has reaffirmed its intention to revisit the Act and establish a cabinet subcommittee for this purpose. However, I'm deeply concerned about the continued use of the Act to arrest and detain people. Lawyer Hassas Hizbullah has now been detained for 16 months under the Act without credible evidence presented before a court. Likewise, Hanaf Hazem, a teacher and poet, has been detained without charge since May 2020. I urge an immediate moratorium on the use of the Act and a clear timeline be set for its comprehensive review or repeal. A national policy for reparation was approved in August, and reparation payments and reconciliation programs have continued. The Office of Missing People has also continued to operate with a 6th regional office open in Kilinochchi, but it needs to inspire confidence among victims. I stress against the importance of transparent, victim-centered and gender-sensitive approaches, and that reparation programs must be accompanied by broader trust, truth and justice measures. I note also that last month, the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions decided to initiate special review of the National Human Rights Commission to determine its compliance with the Paris Agreement principles, indicating its concerns about the appointment process of the Commission and its effectiveness in discharging its human rights mandate. Against this backdrop, my office worked to implement the accountability-related aspect of Resolution 46/1 has begun, pending recruitment of a startup team. We have developed an information and evidence repository with nearly 120,000 individuals' items already held by the UN, and we will initiate as much information gathering as possible this year. I urge Member States to ensure the budget process provides the necessary support so that my office can fully implement this work. I encourage Council members to continue paying close attention to developments in Sri Lanka and to seek credible progress in advancing reconciliation, accountability and human rights.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa addressed the inaugural session of the G20 Interfaith Forum yesterday, where he highlighted education as the key to tackle extremism and terrorism. During his oration, the Premier stressed that policymakers and educationists have a duty to emphasize what all religions share in common. He also noted that reconciliation is a critical need of the prevailing time.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and the Sri Lankan delegation arrived in Italy on a diplomatic visit on the 10th of September. During his visit, the Premier participated in the G20 Interfaith Forum held in Bologna yesterday. Delivering the keynote address at the forum's inaugural session, Prime Minister Rajapaksa stressed on making educational reforms which would highlight the commonalities of all religions.
Our future as one nation depends very much on this idea of unity and solidarity, which is absolutely essential to achieve our economic, political and social goals. Extremist ideology and violence associated with it represent one of the most serious challenges of our time. It is appropriate to recall the tragic event of 9/11 exactly 20 years ago and to share our deep sense of grief with the families of victims of this outrage and indeed with all humankind. This is a reminder of the need for eternal vigilance against all forms of terrorist action, however be the offenders and whatever be their professed aim and purposes. I have no hesitation in identifying education as the most important of these areas. It is the duty of policymakers and educationalists through the curriculum and methods of teaching in our school and universities to emphasize what all religions share in common, the areas of consensus, rather than the point of reflecting differences. The government in my own country is giving priority right now to reform the content of education, to bring it in the line with modern requirements, and to keep equipped our youth to secure satisfying livelihoods which will sustain them in life. COVID-19 makes no distinction among religions, nationalities, and civilizations. Strikes deadly blow at all humanity. In order to survive the pandemic and resume our lives once more, international cooperation needs to be strengthened. Vaccines and other protection made possible by modern medicine must be available across the globe with firm arrangements in place for less affluent nations to be assisted by international organizations and by countries with strong economies. While it may be legitimate for countries to close their borders temporarily to contain the virus, isolation is not the answer. This is a field in which gender equality and dignity is of special importance. Our government is very much preoccupied with the protection of women and children against exploitation and all forms of discrimination at home, in place of employment, and in society at large. Outdated laws relating to marriage, custody, and inheritance are being currently updated by the Parliament of Sri Lanka. Our attitude is one of zero tolerance of human trafficking. Climate change and other environmental issues are in the forefront of our minds. Sri Lanka is trying its best to adopt a balanced approach to human development. While progress on economic issues, it is necessary to support rapidly growing populations. This cannot be done at the expense of the environment. Reconciliation is a critical need of our time. Conflicts and escalating tensions are all too evident around us. Peace and stability come from healthy relationships with all who live in our countries, including those with whom we have deep disagreements. Here again, our religion teaches us that hatred is not conquered by hatred, but by love alone.
Former State Minister Ajit Nimad Cabral has been appointed as the new governor of the central bank as he becomes the first to hold the position twice. Appointed by the President, the former State Minister will assume duties on Wednesday the 15th. In order to pave way for his new appointment, Cabral relinquished his parliamentary seat earlier today.
Governor of the Central Bank, Professor W.D. Lakshman, announced an early retirement last Friday with effect from the 14th of this month, ending his tenure as the 15th Governor of the Central Bank. Following the development, State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms, Ajit Nimad Cabral was tipped to be appointed as the new Governor of the Central Bank. For that to happen, the State Minister has to relinquish his seat in Parliament. Therefore, the State Minister tendered a letter to the Secretary-General of Parliament conveying his immediate resignation as a Member of Parliament. As he made his way out of the parliamentary premises, Cabral was quizzed by the media.
මම හෙට ජනාධිපතිතුමාගෙන් ලිපිය බාර ගන්නට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ 15 වෙනිදා ඉඳලා වැඩ බාර ගන්න ලබයි ලෑස්තිය.
හැබැයි විපක්ෂ වලින් චෝදනා වෙන්නේ මේක දේශපාලනය අත්ගැහීමක් කියලා.
මම මීට ඉස්සරහට අඩ කරලා තියෙනවානේ මහා බැංකුවේ ඉන්න කිසිම කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා කියලා තියෙනවා මම දේශපාලනය කරුවයි කියලා. විපක්ෂය ඒක කියන එක සාධාරණයි. මොකද ඒ අය දන්නවා දැන් උතර වෙනසක් වෙනවයි කියලා. ජනාධිපතිතුමා මට මේ ආරාධනාව කෙරුවම මම මේක ඉතසිතින් බාරගත්තා. මොකද මේ අවස්ථාවේදී මට මේ කැපවීම කරලා රට වෙනුවෙන් මේ කටයුතු කරන්නට මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. කැබිනට් අමාත්‍යවරුන්ගේ බලතලත් එක්ක ඔබතුමාට නව තනතුර පැවරෙනවයි කියලා කියනවා. ඒක ඇත්තද? බොහෝ රටවල මහා බැංකුව අධිපති ධූරය තියෙන්නේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ සමාජිකයෙක්ට සමාන තනතුරක. චීනය එහෙමයි. සිංගප්පූරුව එහෙමයි. මේ අමාරු අවස්ථාවක ඒ වැඩ කටයුතු කරද්දී ජාත්‍යන්තරත් එක්ක කටයුතු කරද්දී එවැනි පිළිගැනීමක් රටේ තියෙනවයි කියලා කියනකොට ඒක ඒ සාකච්ඡාවලට යන්නේ ඒක පහසුයි. ඉතින් එවැනි තත්ත්වයක් මම හිතන්නේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා උදා කරලා දෙවි.
Of course, the former State Minister is no stranger to the central bank. When he accepts his letter of appointment on the 15th, he will be starting his second stint as the central bank governor. Cabral was first appointed to the role in 2006 and served in the position for nearly 9 years. In the meantime, these developments will see former Nationalist MP of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Jayantha Katagoda, return to Parliament. The SLPP has nominated the former MP to the Election Commission to fill the parliamentary seat left vacant by the resignation of former State Minister Cabral. Katagoda resigned from Parliament on the 6th of July to pave the way for SLPP founder Basil Rajapaksa to enter Parliament.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, health authorities today once again urged people to bear their share of the responsibility to ensure that the country does not see a spike in COVID cases and deaths once the curfew is lifted. These remarks were reinforced through the caution delivered by respiratory physician Tushara Galabelu, who said that reinfection is always a possibility among ex-COVID patients.
COVID pneumonia continues to be the chief cause of deaths among those who contract the virus. Patients who develop this condition suffer from respiratory issues and could enter critical condition if proper treatment isn't given. Studies have identified that a majority of patients who succumb to the virus don't die from the initial COVID-inflected pneumonia, but from a secondary bacterial infection that follows. Even if patients do recover from a serious case of pneumonia, they might not be completely out of danger.
සුළු ප්‍රතිශතයක් සාමාන්‍ය 5ක් 10ක් අතර ප්‍රමාණයක් තදබල ලෙස බරපතල ලෙස ලෙඩේ හැදිලා රෝහල්ගත වෙලා ප්‍රතිකාර කරපු රෝගීන්ට පෙනහැලු වලට යම්කිසි ස්ථිර හානියක් වීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. එවැනි රෝගීන් අපි හඳුනාගත යුතුයි. ඒ සඳහා ඖෂධ මදි. යම්කිසි කාලයක් එක දීර්ඝ කාලයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රතිකාර කරන්න ඕනේ. ඊටත් අමතරව පෙනහැලු පුනරුත්ථාපන වැඩසටහන් වලට සහභාගී කරවාගෙන එම රෝගීන් නැවත යථා තත්ත්වයට පත් කර ගැනීමට අපිට උත්සාහ ගන්න පුළුවන්.
However, apart from COVID patients suffering from respiratory issues, asymptomatic and mild symptomatic patients are currently being treated under the home treatment program, a move implemented with the intention of reducing the strain on the country's healthcare system. However, experts say that patients undergoing home treatment should not be inactive.
නිවේශක නිරෝධායන ඉන්නව නම් කාමරයට වෙලා ඇඳකට වෙලා ඉන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. කාමරයෙන් එළියට ඇවිල්ලා පෞලි කට්ටියත් සමග ඒ ආරක්ෂිත උපක්‍රම අනුගමනය කරමින් ගත කරන්න. යම්කිසි ක්‍රියාකාරකම් වල යෙදෙන්න. ගෙදර වැඩ ටික පොඩ කරන්න පටන් ගන්න. නැත්නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? ඔය දවස් සති දෙකක් ගෙදර හිටියාම නිකන් මුකුත් නොකර අපේ තියෙන වැඩ කරන පේශි දුර්වල වෙනවා. එතකොට එකපාරට වැඩ කරන්න ගත්තාම ඒව හරියට වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකට ඇඟට හතිය දැනෙනවා. ඔකයි වෙන්නේ. වැඩිපුර දියර ಜಾති බොන්න ඕනේ. මොකද ඇඟේ වතුර ප්‍රමාණය අඩු වුණොත් එමේ ඒත් අමාරු වැඩි වෙනවා. අනිත් දේ තමයි දැන් හොඳ වුණාට පස්සේ කවුරුත් මේකට බයයිනේ. ඒ ගැන බය වෙවි ඒ ගැන අසාමාන්‍ය ලෙස හිතා ඉන්න එක නතර වෙ යුතුයි. ඒකෙන් ඇත්තටම වැඩිපුර ඔය තියෙන රෝග ලක්ෂණ තවත් වැඩි දියුණු වීමක් වෙන්නේ.
Nevertheless, just as the age-old saying goes, prevention is always better than the cure. However, if patients contract the virus, the chances of recovery are, however, far greater than death. Though a vast majority of patients recover from the disease, there is every chance that they might be reinfected.
COVID දෙවෙනි සැරේ ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මුළු සැරේ ඇති වුණා වගේම දෙවෙනි සැරේත් ඒ වගේම අමාරු වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා පළවෙනි සැරයක් හැදුනායි කියලා දෙවෙනි සැරයක් හැදීමේ හැකියාව අඩු කියලා එකක් නැහැ. ඒ වගේම දෙවෙනි සැරයක් හැදුනාම ඒකේ තියෙන බරපතලකම අඩුයි කියලා කියන්නත් බෑ. මොකද අපි දැකලා තියෙනවා ඕනතරම් දෙවෙනි වර හදලා බොහොම බරපතල ලෙස නියුමෝනියා වැළඳුණු රෝගීන්.
In the meantime, with rapid PCR testing being made available for departures at the airport, questions have been raised as to why the facility cannot be provided to inbound travelers as well.
Rapid පරීක්ෂණ කරන ක්‍රමවේදය ලංකාවේ තාම ප්‍රචලිත නැහැ. අවශ්‍ය කරන උපකරණ ගෙන්නන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම ගුවන් තොටුපළට එන සියලු මගීන්ට ඒක කරනවා මිසක් අපිට එක කණ්ඩායමකට කරන්නත් තව කණ්ඩායමකට හෝටලයකට ගිහින් නවතින්න කියන්නත් බෑ. ඒ අවශ්‍ය කරන ධාරිතාව ගොඩනැගුම්ට අවශ්‍ය කරන සැලසුම් සකස් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඉදිරියේදී සමහර විට විශේෂඥයන් විසින් ඒක අනුමත කරනවා නම් ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරાવી.
Speaking at another media briefing, Dr. Herat went on to warn that Sri Lanka's COVID situation will regress if the people don't bear their share of responsibility.
Towards the end of this pandemic, unless we adopt a new normal, there will be a resurgence of the epidemic if you go back to the previous level immediately after the end of the pandemic. So therefore, the health has already recommended, especially in Sri Lanka, the concept of DREAM, which gives the social distancing, the wearing of face mask and washing hands and similar hygienic practices, which will definitely help to prevent the resurgence of the disease. So therefore, even if the cases are going down, even sizable proportion of the country is vaccinated, we need to adopt this DREAM concept continuously until a considerable period of time, during which the risk of COVID coming back fade away, and then after that I think we might gradually come back to a different level of new normalcy, which may not be the same as what we used to practice before the pandemic.
State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana, today moved to dispel the misconception that being vaccinated against COVID adversely impacts libido. It's come following the observation that some youth have become vaccine averse due to this fake news circulating on social media.
Since Sri Lanka's vaccine program began focusing inoculations for the country's 20 to 30-year population, starting with the district of Hambantota, the turnout has been nothing but positive. However, recently health authorities had observed a vaccine aversion among some people of this age group. The reason for such behavior is a misconception that the vaccine would lead to impotency and reproductive difficulty.
එක හේතුවක් හැටියට අපිට දැනට පෙන්ලා ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා මේ සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ඔස්සේ ප්‍රචාරයක් දියත් වෙලා තියෙනවා COVID-19 රෝගයට එන්නත ලබා ගැනීමෙන් ලිංගික ශක්තිය හීන වෙනවා දරුවෝ හැදීමේ හැකියාව නැති වෙනවා මේ ආකාරයේ විවිධ කතා ඔළුවට වැටිලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි හොයලා බැලුවා මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ලෝකෙ කරලා තියෙන පරීක්ෂණ ගැන කිසිම තැනකින් එහෙම දැනට වාර්තා වෙලා නැහැ. මේක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ව්‍යාජයක්.
Simultaneously, the country's over 30 population is also being vaccinated. State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana, said that they will be able to complete the inoculation of the remaining over 30s population in another week. Meanwhile, with the government already having announced plans to vaccinate the country's child population starting from next week, the technical committee in charge of deciding the priority of the group had put forth a three-step plan. As such, Secretary to the Sri Lanka College of Pediatricians, Dr. Channa De Silva, also made certain recommendations with regard to the vaccination drive focusing children between the ages of 12 to 19.
The first step, we mainly focus on children with some sort of chronic diseases, especially disabled children and some children who are on long-term treatment. Mild wheezing does not include in this category, so we have some sort of just approximate estimations. Around 30,000 of children will be eligible for this first round. Children with this type of comorbidities might have highest risk of development of severe COVID-19 infections or even deaths. When the vaccines are available and more and more data accumulate, as a second step, we can consider immunization of children over 16 years, especially targeting the A-level and O-level groups. So this will facilitate the school reopening as well as conductance of the special national examinations.
He also touched on the sensitive topic of vaccinating children between 12 and 15 years of age.
Later, immunization of all children above 12 years, 12 to 15 age group will be considered very later because there are some controversies regarding this immunization of this group. For example, it is now being approved and carried out in USA. All children aged more than 12 years are getting vaccine, but still that is not approved in United Kingdom because all these things depend on the safety of the vaccine as well as the effect of vaccine, especially the reduction of severe diseases.
Now, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiris today cast suspicion whether the recent deletion of data from the National Medicines Regulatory Authority database is the doing of pharmaceutical racketeers. The court was also told that the deletion of data was given or has given pharma companies the opportunity to dictate prices of drugs as they see fit.
The case related to the deletion of a folder from the database of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority was taken up today before Colombo Chief Magistrate Buddhika Sri Ragala. Appearing on behalf of the Criminal Investigation Department, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Apiris stated that the deletion of data could possibly be a part of the processes launched by medicinal drug racketeers. Whilst pointing out that the maintenance of the database was handed over to the Epic Technology Group for a period of 5 years, the Deputy Solicitor General said that the data deletion is a result of negligence on the part of the company. He added that the company had not taken measures to maintain a backup of the relevant information. He noted that pharmaceutical companies are importing the same medicinal drug under different names, adding that data with regard to the composition of those drugs are also among the deleted. Furthermore, Pires said that the deletion of data has enabled drug companies to dictate prices. He also observed a risk in updating the database under the supervision of the accused and therefore requested a future date to make submissions before the court following a study of the matter. The Chief Magistrate, however, said that the court cannot intervene with regard to the updating of the relevant database. He then revoked the recent order issued preventing the updating of the database and informed that the updating should be done in consultation with all the stakeholders concerned. The case will be taken up again on the 9th of December.
Now, in other local news, the Colombo High Court trial at bar has decided to call the case pertaining to the Easter Sunday bombings on the 4th of October. The defendants are expected to be formally indicted on the day. A special 3-member panel of judges was appointed on the 1st of September to hear the case regarding the 2019 Easter Sunday terror attacks. Police last month filed 23,270 charges against 25 suspects in the case. The charges filed under the Prevention of Terrorism Act include conspiring to murder, aiding and abetting, procuring arms and ammunition, and attempted murder. We will see you once more on the other side of this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now to take a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index lost 328.42 points to end at 8,536.88, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 3,204.07, following a loss of 131.44 points today. Market turnover was 6.7 billion rupees. Now here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today, the market continued its downward trend, second day from last Friday. Continuing the trend, there seems to be a significant amount of selling pressure in the market. So the market has come down around 800 points from the peak, with today's 328 points. So massive drop today, one of the largest we've seen in the recent times. Overall, the transportation sector and the capital goods sector are the ones that are continuing this downtrend. Turnover was around the 6.7 billion mark and the number of transactions around the 38,000 mark. So we are continuing to see the retail sentiment and the retail pressure onto the high side, but slightly lower than the peak levels that we've seen.
Now then, the Sri Lankan rupee remained unchanged at 202.99 cents against the US dollar today. With that, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies during the day. Now then, Sri Lanka suffered a 9-wicket loss at the hands of South Africa in the second 2020 international yesterday. The win also gave the visitors the series win with a match to spare. Sri Lankan batsmen could not deal with the South African slow bowlers as 7 wickets fell for spin. Speaking after the defeat, Sri Lanka's batting coach Grant Flower was of the view that some of the batsmen's thought processes aren't what they should be.
It's not through lack of practice. The guys hit lots of balls. We do lots of drills. We speak about it. We have lots of meetings. But at the moment, some of their thought processes probably aren't spot on. They're making probably inappropriate decisions at the wrong time. And it's just execution under pressure. And the South Africans have played it quite well. But, hats off to the South African spinners. I think they've bowled really well. And they've got it in good areas. They've had good fields. And the ball has spun and bounced, and we haven't been good enough to deal with it. And for us to succeed at the World Cup and in the qualifiers, we're going to have to improve a lot and improve quickly.
Sri Lanka's batting coach Grant Flower was also questioned on the Sri Lankan batsman's aversion towards playing the reverse sweep.
Quite a few of the guys are reluctant to play it. And I think the belief within the guys is they can manipulate the ball without having to play the sweep or the reverse sweep. But on big turning pitches, sometimes when you can't get down the track and you can't rotate the strike, you do have to play it. And the guys do practice it, but maybe they need to practice it more. But it's a confidence thing.
There were 51 dot balls in Sri Lanka's innings yesterday, and the side's batting coach pulled no punches in his observations.
Our analysts tells us the amount of dot balls and it's recorded, and we do have specific goals of dot balls and we try and limit them each match, but past few matches it's been very poor. Sometimes it comes from trying to hit the ball too hard or looking for too many boundaries. When it's good ball, maybe just getting off strike. So a lot of it's thought process. We speak about it a lot. The guys work on it hard in the nets. The better sides limit the dot balls a lot better than we're doing at the moment.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.